Hello, I'm Edna Kane Williams, Executive Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer at AARP. The time you are investing today to take the course, Becoming a More Inclusive Volunteer, is critical to our overall success. At AARP, we are working to uplift the voices and experiences of all people. As an AARP volunteer, we need your help to embed diversity into our advocacy, education, and outreach work. This training and others like it are examples of our commitment to the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the 50 plus. As we all work to fulfill AARP's mission to empower people to choose how they live as they age, we must remember that AARP's founder, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, saw the power of uniting diverse and inclusive voices to advocate for change. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is everyone's responsibility at AARP. Thank you for taking the time to take this training. It will help you grow your skills at becoming a more inclusive volunteer.
Hello to all my AARP friends out there. I'm Derek Young. My message is lessons from legendary leaders. So for the past 32 years, I have lived in the Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. Now, just to get it straight, no, this is not where Elvis was. That's Memphis, all right? But this is the home of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who really are the reason Nashville is even called Music City. Well, in that time, I've been really blessed, really fortunate to do a lot of nonprofit work that directly impacts the citizens of our city, of our region, and of our state. During that time, I've also had the great privilege of working with some tremendous people. One of the reasons I would recommend anyone be an AARP volunteer or volunteer for any nonprofit is just the friendships you create, the lifelong, high quality, meaningful friendships. Well, I thought about in your role as an AARP volunteer who wants to be more inclusive, I thought I would just share some of the lessons I've learned from some of my favorite co-volunteers over the years. These are, as they say, real people who have made a positive impact on me, but more importantly, they've made a phenomenal impact on the nonprofits we served. So the first person I'm thinking about is a gentleman named Ron Corbin. Now, during his working days, Ron was a major executive for Allstate Insurance. And we worked on nonprofits in a couple of different capacities. But here is my number one takeaway from Ron. Even though he was a high-level executive, even though he was involved in a wide array of things all across our community, Ron was always accessible. You know, it's hard for anybody to be accessible, but the more you have to say grace over, that's the term I use to say the more you have responsibility for, you would think the harder it would be to be accessible. Somehow, some way, Ron took calls, he returned calls. He took emails, he returned emails. He set meetings, he kept meetings. I want to ask you, as an AARP volunteer, how accessible are you? You know, this notion of being accessible is one of the great sort of nuances of being more inclusive. Simply put, the more accessible you are to more people, the more inclusive you'll likely be. So again, what can you do with your time? What can you do with your schedule, with your calendar, to actually create time throughout the month where you offer that up to mentor people, to give them maybe a history of AARP, to spend time helping them build relationships? The point is, I've found when I do executive coaching for people is that many times if I get a leader to create time in their calendar to be accessible, they will be. So again, what I learned from Ron is the value and the significance of being accessible, because that accessibility is where I can build connections with new people. I can serve as a mentor to other people. I can be available to support the other activities that are going on with my fellow AARP volunteers. They might want to bring me along to help seal a relationship. The point is, my accessibility is really where that starts. Another person I work with over the years here in the Nashville area is a gentleman named Alan Valentine. And Alan has long been the CEO of the Nashville Symphony. And I served on the board. I was the community engagement chairman. And one main thing I learned from Alan is that in the midst of chaos, you stand flat-footed and you communicate with people. There came a point in the symphony's short history during the economic downturn where it looked like the symphony might close. So there was a lot of what? Speculation, a lot of articles being written. Social media was starting to really explode at that time. So there was a lot in social media going on. One of the things he chose to do as the CEO was every Monday at 8 a.m., he stood in an empty conference room filled with chairs, and he invited any and everyone to come in and sit down and get the latest update on what was going on. Now, how does that relate to you? Well, obviously, I hope where you are, you never have to do something like that, right? I hope that your AARP group always is flourishing and functioning at the highest capacity. The takeaway for me is that when things get tough and uncertain, and if you're writing notes, please write down both words. When things get tough and uncertain, great volunteer leaders stand up. They answer questions. They provide as much information as possible. I have often told my clients, the crazier things get, your goal is to over-communicate. So, when you think about your city or town, are there things that are impacting how AARP is going to function? Or are there changes in your legislature? Are there changes in laws? Are there changes in any way that are going to impact your volunteer team? If so, I want you to be that volunteer who's willing to handle the tough question, who's willing to address the uncertainty. Now, the benefit on the back end is that fortunately, one of the people on the list I'm about to share came in and saved the day. I'll talk about that in a second. And the symphony went on. But I want you to imagine how tight the team was once things got back on track. The team was tight because Alan was transparent. Alan was honest. Alan was communicative. And my experience tells me is that people always want those things from you, but they especially want those things when times are tough. Now, in talking about the symphony, we have had at that time a board member who is actually one of the wealthiest people in the United States. And when I say one of the wealthiest, I mean in the billion-dollar range. Well, this woman, Martha Ingram, has been a major contributor to the arts throughout Nashville and what we call Middle Tennessee. And she was the one who created a fund that helped the symphony following those tough times and got it back on course. Here's one of the lessons that I learned from her when she was our board chair. So for my first 3 years out of 6 on the symphony board, she was our board chair. And when I tell you our meetings started and ended on time, every time. When I tell you we followed Robert's Rules of Order to a T, when I tell you committee members came prepared to share updates, when I tell you people came prepared with their ideas and suggestions on how to move the symphony forward, I've never seen a nonprofit leader run such effective meetings. So my takeaway for you is, as an AARP volunteer, really hear me now, to what degree are you leading meetings in a structured, organized, respectable way? And to what degree are you contributing to meetings so that they will run and flow in a respectable way? You see, each one of you in your volunteer team, you are donating your most valuable asset, your TIME, your time, because your time is your life. There's no asset, in my opinion, you have more valuable than that. So clearly you want people to maximize your time. Well, what I learned from Mrs. Ingram is there's a way to run a meeting. It starts with an agenda. It starts with starting and ending on time. It starts with following the proper rules and procedures of a meeting. And it also starts with challenging leaders to come forth in a clear, thorough, and effective way, and to expect that over time. Let's shift to the educational world. One of my dear friends is a gentleman named Joey Hatch. And for the better part of 40 years, Joey worked in the construction industry, and he served as the president of a division of Skanska, which is a European, Swedish-based company, but obviously has a large presence in the U.S. Joey is a graduate of Nashville State Community College. It's a community college. He went on from there to Auburn, where he gained his degree and went on into the construction field. Joey has a passion for Nashville State because that's where he got his start. One of the things I've seen Joey do that I want to recommend you consider is to keep leveraging your passion. How has AARP helped you? How has AARP helped friends or family members? Don't just leave that out on the side. Use that as a promotional tool, as a marketing tool, as a way to connect people with the deeper purpose of the organization. That's what I saw Joey do all the time. You see, when people would say, wait a minute, you were the president of a division of a $17 billion multinational corporation and you started at a community college? See, Joey is a person who was wiping away the stigmas associated with community college. Guess what? You can do the same thing. You can help wipe away any stigmas anyone might have about AARP, about the process of getting older, the process of learning about what it means to be older. You see, you can leverage your passion in that same way, in that same regard. That's a key lesson, and that's something that I have always admired Joey for. And then the last person I want to talk to you about is a friend, and her name is Agenia Clark. Agenia is now the head of the Girl Scouts here in the Nashville area. And we have worked on a wide array of community endeavors over 3 decades. And here is the thing I admire about Agenia the most. She is all about the truth, but she is what I call a powerhouse. If there is an issue that requires someone to be truthful about what's going to be best for the most people, what's going to be best for the people who have the least, what's going to be best for the constituents of this organization, Agenia is a person who starts with the truth. And then she works her way into how do I build influence, how do I build bridges to help the truth be known and help the truth be carried out. So what am I saying to you? You've got a big role at AARP. You've got a lot you're responsible for. Again, there are many projects, many activities that are going on an ongoing basis. You've got new people coming into the organization all the time. You've got new things coming down from the national office. I get that. But what I hope you'll take from my friend Agenia is this notion to be someone who always puts the truth first, and the truth and how it impacts the people that AARP serves. Yes, does it take great skills to negotiate and navigate around the things related to the truth? Sure it does. But starting with the truth. What's best for the people of AARP? What's best for our members at AARP? I think if you follow Agenia's lead and start there, I think it's a great way for you to carry out your volunteer leadership. So, as I close, I want you to just really think about that. How can you take these lessons from these legendary leaders, people I have clearly, obviously grown to really admire, and how can you incorporate these lessons into your regular, recurring work with AARP? I think if you really study each one of those, they form a real nice group of principles that you can follow to have greater success for yourself and obviously for AARP.